One thing that always strikes me whenever I read Nietzsche is the prophetic element in his writing. One can only be astonished about how correct he was in his predictions, living now 120 years after his death.
But his most terrifying prediction must be what would occur after the death of God. It was not just a loss of a religion, it was the loss of a complete metaphysical structure and all values in which the Western society was based upon.
Embedded within the idea of the Christian God lied the whole way of life at the time in Europe, and Nietzsche saw that it was crumbling. But it was in a way inevitable because of the very nature of Christianity.
John 8:32. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. John 14:6. I am the way and the truth and the life.
As we discussed in the last episode, Nietzsche saw Christianity as a Socratic or Platonic religion because it certainly have a big emphasis on the virtue of truth. But this is the whole point, because sooner or later people will use this virtue of truth against their own religion. So within the structure of Christianity itself was a time bomb.
And the bomb was about to go off during Nietzsche's time, with the advancement of science in the Western world.
Almost everyone have what Nietzsche refers to as the metaphysical need, something to hold on to that is transcendent to yourself. And for almost 2,000 years, Christianity has served its purpose to relieve this metaphysical need. But now, without Christianity, something else will have to take its place.
Nietzsche writes, how strong the metaphysical need is and how difficult nature renders our departure from it may be seen from the fact that even in the free spirit, when he has cast off everything metaphysical, the loftiest effect of art can easily produce a resounding of the long, silent, even broken metaphysical string.
If you don't know what I mean with metaphysics, I would recommend you to watch the episode I did on the basics of philosophy where I talk about metaphysics. But now, moving on. In this quote, Nietzsche talked about the free spirit. Let us elaborate a little bit on that.
Let's begin with its opposite, the bound spirit. Most people are considered bound spirits. They accept what is given to them. If they are born in a Christian state, they will become Christian. If they are born Hindu, they will become a Hindu. They will submit to the morals of the given time and place without question. More or less, these people stick to the opinions of the majority. They are sheep.
The bound spirit is a person that cling on to the herd. He doesn't really have any real opinions about anything, because all of his opinions come from the herd. So if the herd deems an act to be immoral, then so will the bound spirit. Then we have the opposite of the bound spirit, which is the free spirit.
We call that man a free thinker who thinks otherwise than is expected of him, in consideration of his origin, surroundings, position, and office, or by reason of the prevailing contemporary views. He is the exception. Fettered minds are the rule. These latter reproach him, saying that his free principles either have their origin in a desire to be remarkable or else cause free actions to be inferred. Moreover, it is not essential to the free thinker that he should hold more correct views, but that he should have liberated himself from what was customary, be it successfully or disastrously. As a rule, however, he will have truth, or at least the spirit of truth. Investigation on his side, he demands reasons. The other demand faith.
The bound spirits will always hate the free thinkers. Because even though the bound spirits have not chosen their way of life, it is still sacred to them. And the mere existence of free thinkers that act without the boundaries of the bound spirits' morality is a big threat to their whole way of life. They are immoralists, destroyer of morality itself.
So this is the core of one of the biggest problems of the entire 20th century. Europe being filled with bound spirits, having submitted to a religion that was dying. But the metaphysical need persists, and now Christianity won't be able to fill the void. But what can take its place?
Some people might suggest that science can take the place of Christianity, but there's a couple of problems with that.
According to Friedrich, science won't be able to fill this void because of two things. Firstly, the highest virtue of science is truth, and as we discussed before, truth is the very foundation of Christianity. So science is based on the same virtue as Christianity. So according to Friedrich, science is sprung out of the very same ground as Christianity, so it cannot possibly act as a proper antithesis to Christian values.
Also, science only deals with the nature of things and how they operate. You cannot possibly derive morals out of natural facts. Just because something is in a certain way doesn't mean you ought to act in a certain fashion.
Here Nietzsche writes in his Genealogy of Morals, "No, do not come to me with science when I am looking for the natural antagonist to the ascetic ideal. When I ask, where is the opposing will in which its opposing ideal expresses itself? Science is not nearly independent enough for that. In every respect, it first needs a value ideal, a value-creating power in whose service it can believe in itself. Science itself never creates values." Let me explain this furthermore. Here you have what can be called an Aristotelian ethical syllogism. Cancer kills people. Scientist discovers a cure. Conclusion: scientist uses his cure to save people. But this syllogism is incomplete. You need an ought or a should for this logic to hold. People should be rescued, and this ought is 100% unscientific. You cannot derive an ought from an is. This realization was already discovered by the Scottish philosopher David Hume in the 18th century, and is also called the is-ought gap.
I probably wouldn't say that Nietzsche is anti-science, but he just doesn't believe that it will be able to fill the void of Christianity. So what then? Well, Nietzsche theorizes that if something should take its place, it needs to be a proper antithesis to all that Christianity stood for. There might be a solution that we discussed in the last episode, and that would be art and music, and especially the Greek tragedy, because it certainly is an antithesis to Christianity. I will elaborate on this concept a little more in the next episode.
We discussed one of the bases of Christianity in the third episode on Kierkegaard, the concept of freedom and sin. A quick recap. God created man with the possibility to sin, which is the same as the possibility to disobey God. So the Christian foundation is that of a metaphysical freedom.
But for Nietzsche, there certainly is no such thing as metaphysical freedom. Here he writes in Human, All Too Human.
In looking at a waterfall, we imagine that there is freedom of will and fancy in the countless turnings, twisting, and breaking of the waves. But everything incompulsory, every movement can be mathematically calculated. So it is also with human actions. One would have to be able to calculate every single action beforehand if one were all-knowing. Equally so, all progress of knowledge, every error, all malice. The one who acts certainly labors under the illusion of voluntariness. If the world's wheel were to stand still for a moment, and all-knowing, calculating reason were there to make use of this pause, it could foretell the future of every creature to the remotest times, and mark out every track upon which that wheel would continue to roll. The delusion of the acting agent about himself, the supposition of a free will, belongs to this mechanism which still remains to be calculated.
So if we're not free acting individuals, the whole of Christian morality falls, because it is based upon us having free will. So if God dies, so does morality.
That man, therefore, cannot be made responsible for anything, neither for his nature, nor his motives, nor his actions, nor his effects. It has therewith come to be recognized that the history of moral valuations is at the same time the history of an error, the error of responsibility, which is based upon the error of the freedom of will.
Most people before thought that morality was given to man by God. But according to Nietzsche, of course, man created God, and also morality with it. So morality is, of course, a man-made concept as well.
The book Genealogy of Morals, Nietzsche is discussing the origin of morality itself. He takes an interesting approach with analyzing language and the origin of words such as good and bad. And Nietzsche thinks these words derive from a more or less class perspective. The word good was always defined from that which was good for the aristocracy. Here he says, the pathos of nobility and distance, as I said, the continuing and predominant feeling of complete and fundamental superiority of a higher ruling kind in relation to a lower kind, to those below, that is the origin of the antithesis, good and bad.
So in the beginning, morality was actually created by the aristocracy, but it would later be taken over by the lower classes, or the herd, as Nietzsche liked to call them. And they would redefine morality to fit themselves. And it is here that Christianity comes into the picture, because for Nietzsche, Christianity has a morality that is only benefiting the herd, the bound spirits, and the slaves. It is a slave morality driven by resentment.
Slave morality was made to domesticate man, make him weak, stupid, and controllable. Psalms 37:11. But the meek shall inherit the earth, and shall delight themselves in the abundance of peace.
A lot of people was theorizing about socialism during Nietzsche's time. But Nietzsche didn't like socialism at all, because to him, socialism is merely a shadow from the old Christian morality, because it too is based upon a slave morality, equality. In Christian thought, everybody's equal before God. And the same thing goes with socialism. They strive for an equal society.
So socialism can't replace Christianity either. But what then? What can possibly take its place?
Nietzsche was heavily opposed to anything that resembles what he calls a real-world theory. Let me elaborate.
In the Christian tradition, this world we're living in now is only created by God as a test of our piety and strength. The real world is that of heaven, the realm of God Himself. So this life we're living right now is insignificant compared with the real world of an eternal heavenly life. This theory is a denial of this world as it is in the affirmation of the real world, heaven.
Philosophers are also guilty of this real-world theory idea. Take Plato, for instance. Plato theorized that there was an eternal, unchanging world of forms. That this world that we're living in is only a flawed copy of. Take a circle, for instance. You would never be able to draw a perfect circle, but yet the idea of the perfect circle exists in your mind. How come?
Because according to Plato, when we die, our souls get a glimpse of this perfect world of forms in their eternal structure. But before we are reincarnated, we have to drink from the river Lethe, which makes us forget all that we have seen from the world of forms. But the memories remains hidden inside of us, memories which we can recollect.
Another famous real-world theory is that of Immanuel Kant's thing in itself. I can't possibly explain the whole theory but the gist of it is that we humans are confined to our basic senses in perceiving the world, but the things exist in a real world that is exclusive to our senses. So the thing in itself, exclusive to our senses.
Socialism and communism resembles Christianity in this manner as well. For Nietzsche, they don't celebrate the life here and now. Christians want you to act a certain way to get to heaven. This life is only a way to the real world. And communists is just the same. They want you to act in a certain way that will bring about the utopia. The way life is right now is bad and flawed.
So for Friedrich, all these real-world theories, be it the Christian heaven or the communist utopia, to him they have the completely wrong focus. They are focusing on something that might come later, and they want you to act in a certain manner that will bring about the utopia or heaven. So for Friedrich, they are deniers of this life here and now.
So as I have said before, Nietzsche saw it as his task to create a philosophy that says yes to life, a celebration of the life here and now, a Dionysian philosophy.
That's it for today, everyone. I promise you that the next episode will be a big one. But until then, take care, everyone.